Peter Watkins is a British director who makes cinema verite films. His films are usually set in a near future using documentary-styled images and narration. The films issue problems in the world society and what possible consequences there could be. Every film criticizes a different social issue, but ultimately they all come down to the dysfunction of government. In every movie that he makes, he finds different but always shocking ways to send his message and finds the best way for the specific topic he's making the film about. The War Game, Punishment Park, and Privilege are movies criticizing government and state. The messages are slightly different. In The War Game, we see that the government lacks to acknowledge the presence of the threat of a nuclear war. In Privilege, the state is so keen to keep the youth peaceful off the streets and out of politics that a teenage pop star is being used to have a good influence on the youth. The youth, including pop star Stephen Shorter, almost seem brainwashed because of these policies. And in Punishment Park, the American government in particular is being accused of great faults in their judicial system and the taking away of human rights to maintain peace and order. The War Game is mostly like a documentary, explicitly talking about the events in the film as a possible scenario, using words like would and could. Even though it is made clear that the events shown in the War Game aren't real, the images are still shocking in the way Watkins always seemed to be able to shock his audiences. This is supported by the documentary form in which the movie is shot. The narrator gives us a lot of technical facts on nuclear weapons and the effects that they would have when used in a war. Privilege, on the other hand, is more narrative. There is a commentator, but he is hardly present in the film. Sometimes there are short interviews, but these aren't in conventional settings in which a documentary would set them. Strange camera angles are being used, and the actors are sometimes doing a certain activity. This different approach by Watkins can be explained by the fact that the general idea of the movie wasn't his, and he worked with two others on the film. Even though Watkins had a great influence, especially on the aspect of the social message that is being sent, it is obvious this isn't the way Watkins would go about making movies before and after making Privilege. Watkins has made this movie shocking, not so much with images as in The War Game, but more with storyline and dialogue.
I mean, you must understand that he is, in every sense of the word, a gilt-edged investment. He does not belong to himself. He belongs to the world, and therefore, he no longer has any right to himself.
The exception to this is the beginning, when Stephen Shorter is cuffed, gets beaten up, and bleeds from the handcuffs after. This image was necessary to provide the first shock to the audience, when after this it is mostly dialogue that is used to make the audience horrified by the possibility of a world like the one in Privilege. Punishment Park is the perfect combination between documentary and a narrative. The commentator or interviewer, in this case Peter Watkins, is there just enough to make the film as realistic as possible, while we are narratively involved as well, watching the trial of Groups 638 and Group 637 in the desert. This realism is particularly present in a part at the end. Participants of Group 637 are throwing rocks at the National Security Guards at a protest. One of the guards turns around and starts shooting. The two actors immediately fall on the ground. We hear Watkins' voice after, who thinks that somehow the guns got loaded, panicking and screaming, "No, cut.
Cut the camera!"
The actors were just playing their roles, but because there wasn't a set script for the movie, Watkins hadn't expected the actors to fall on the ground. So even on the set, the situation seemed real at times. Watkins' decision to work without a script was a wise one. The actors in the film were emotionally involved in these political and social issues, which made their own reactions to it more realistic and believable than any script would. We can conclude that Watkins has very different ways of sending a message to his audiences, but always uses the element of shock. Facts, images, dialogue, and his way of working all add to the shock we get from watching his movie. In the three movies I discussed, different methods are the main reason why the films are so shocking, and these fit perfectly with the message that is being sent. In The War Game, horrifying images are necessary to support the technical facts the commentator is telling us. In Privilege, dialogue about the psychological consequences are conveying shock and horror. And in Punishment Park, the lack of script and the sincereness by the actors are shockingly realistic.